Vera had a list. She kept it in her head. The way her people kept most important things, not written down, not stored in a file but pressed into the soft part of memory where things go when they matter too much to risk losing. The list had no title. She knew what it was. It was every soft thing about Cole. The garden was at the top. He had started it in their second month aboard the station, when the habitat module still smelled like recycled air and new polymer, and nothing personal at all. He had requisitioned soil, actual soil ship, up at a cost that made the station quartermaster go quiet in the way people go quiet when they are deciding whether to argue, and he had pressed seeds into it with his fingers like he was tucking something in for the night. He named the plants not after famous people, not after places, after people he missed. The small yellow-leafed one in the corner was his grandmother May, the tall sprawling one that kept trying to grow sideways was his old crew chief, a man named Luhu, according to Cole, had also always tried to grow sideways. Vera had not understood this at first. The naming of plants after people, her own people named things for what they were, or what they did, or what shape they made. Against the light, they did not name a leaf for a grandmother, but she had watched Cole talk to May on difficult evenings, not long conversations, just quiet words barely above her breath, and she had understood eventually that it was not strange, it was just human. The same species that had burned their own oceans 3 centuries ago was also the kind of species that pressed a dead woman's name into soil 600 light years from her grave so she could grow somewhere new. Both things, always both things. That was the line in Vera's academic paper, the one that her supervisor had flagged as too sentimental for a xenobiology journal. She had left it in anyway. She stood by it. Cole was proof she had written that humanity's reputation for violence was selective reading, that the data sets used by NARI researchers to classify humans as a high aggression species were accurate but incomplete, the way a photograph of a storm is accurate but does not tell you about the morning after. She believed this completely. She had 6 years of evidence. The garden, the way he braided her secondary tendrils each morning when she couldn't reach for fingers, moving through the thin bioluminescent strands with the careful patience of someone diffusing something delicate, the way he had learned 17 words of a language and used them only at the right moments, which was harder than learning 100 words and using them wrong. The scar on his collarbone from a whole breach he'd survived before. She knew him, which he touched sometimes without noticing, the way people touch old wounds, not from pain but from the faint animal reassurance that the skin closed, and the foreheads. Her people did not press foreheads together. It was not a NAR thing. The first time Cole had done it 3 weeks in, she had gone very still, the way a creature goes still when it encounters something it doesn't have a category for. He had pulled back immediately, reading her stillness wrong. Starting to apologize, she had leaned forward and pressed her forehead back to his. He had smiled, the kind of smile that humans make when something lands exactly right, small, private, little, like relief. She had needed it. After that, the way she needed atmosphere, the way she needed the particular frequency of light that her skin could drink. It had become the thing she reached for at the end of hard days, and he always met her there, his forehead warm against hers, his breath slow and even, and she would read his emotional state through the contact, and Find what she always found: calm, steady, safe. 6 years, 10,000 readings. Not once had she found something she didn't recognize. This was what she was writing in her log the morning the news fragment came through. She wrote it every few months, a kind of personal inventory, a record of evidence. She was mid-sentence asterisk, the most significant finding in 6 years of close observation is that Car Grove's gentleness is not a surface behavior, but a structural one asterisk. When the station feed flagged an item in the human diplomatic channel, Crestfield Station, outer frontier population, 412. Registered residents, plus the usual traffic of survey teams and supply crews gone silent, not a communications error, not a scheduled blackout. Feed flagged it at priority amber because 3 independent relay points had all lost the signal at the same time, and that kind of silence did not come from equipment failure. She read it twice, filed it in her log as a note, wrote the word asterisk Vorith asterisk beneath it because she was a scientist, and she had been watching the positioning data for 11 months, and she knew how to read a pattern even when no one was ready to call it one. Then she went back to her sentence and finished it. Cole was at the kitchen counter when she came out, coffee black in the white cup with the chip on the handle that he had never replaced because he claimed chip mugs had more character. He was reading something on his tablet. She watched him the way she always watched him, not clinically, not the way she observed research subjects, but the way you look at something you have decided is yours. He was by the metrics her people used for such things, not symmetrical. His nose had been broken once and reset slightly wrong. His left shoulder set a fraction lower than his right from an old injury. His hair did whatever it wanted, which was mostly to point in 3 directions and commit to none of them. He was by the metrics her people used for such things, not beautiful. He was beautiful in the specific human way, the way that certain things are beautiful because they look like they have lived, because the edges are real, because nothing about the face is performing. Her people had a word for it asterisk verthestisk, the quality of a thing that moves you precisely because it could also hurt you. A cliff edge at dawn, a river in full run, a fire that is just the right size. She had never told him. She had assumed each time she thought about it that he would find it strange. The news item sat in her log. Crestfield silent amber flag. Cole set down his tablet. He picked up his coffee. He set it down again without drinking. She noticed. She watched him look out the viewport at the stars. Same stars that were always there. Same stars he had surveyed for 11 years. Before the survey work, before the piece. Before her, he picked up his coffee. Again he drank it. He asked her how the paper revision was going. She told him. He listened, his head tilted the way it tilted when he was genuinely following something, not just waiting for his turn to speak. She filed his reaction to the news fragment in the back of her mind. Marked it asterisk small anomaly worth watching dot asterisk. She went back to the paper. The word asterisk Vorith asterisk sat in her notes waiting. She did not yet understand what she had already begun to document. The plants still got watered every morning without fail. Cole rose before Vera made his coffee and spent 15 minutes with the garden before the station day cycle even started. She could hear him from the bedroom, the soft sound of the water, the occasional low words spoken to one plant or another, the specific silence of a person who is content in what they doing this was, she would think later, the thing that fooled her because everything else was changing. The station felt it, that low current tension that runs through a place when everyone knows something that no one is officially saying yet. The Nari diplomatic staff moved through the corridors with their skin dulled, which was what happened to her people under stress, the bioluminescence retreating inward like a tide going out. The joint operations crew had started taking their meals in smaller groups. Conversations stopped a half beat too early when certain people walked into rooms. Vorith had rejected the Accord's inquiry into Crestfield formally with language that was precise and contemptuous in equal measure, the kind of formal language that is designed to communicate something very specific underneath the official surface. What it communicated was asterisk, we are not answering to you. Not now, not going forward. Asterisk. Konsolv Kurin, who had served on 4 interspecies Accord bodies and survived 2 of them collapsing, spent a long time in his office with the door closed after the rejection came through. When he came out, he announced a series of measured diplomatic responses and used the phrase asterisk cautious optimism asterisk in a way that made Lena Cho, standing 3 ft to his left, press her mouth into a line so flat it looked like a wound. Lena Cho was the human diplomat assigned to the NAR Accord. She was small and precise and had been running on stimulants and 4 hours of sleep a night for the past 3 weeks. She had the look of someone who had been trying to tell people something for a very long time and had run out of new ways to say it. Vera had tried to read her emotional state twice in the corridor and stopped. Both times, what she found there was not something she wanted to sit with. Cole laughed at Pete's jokes. Pete Vasquez was Cole's second from the old survey days, wiry, quick, the kind of person who turned everything into a bit because the alternative was feeling it directly. Cole always laughed in the right places, which was something Vera had noticed early on. Not the polite laugh, not the social reflex, the real one from the chest, arriving a half-second late. Because he had actually followed the joke to its end, he was unchanged. Visibly, measurably, observably unchanged. The garden got watered, the coffee got made, the forehead press happened every morning and every night. His laugh was real and his hands were careful, and he asked her questions about her research with the specific quality of attention that means a person is genuinely curious rather than performing curiosity. She had cataloged every soft thing about him for 6 years, and it was all still there, and this she would understand later was the thing that should have told her everything, because the softness was still there. It had not cracked or frayed or gone thin. It was fully intact, which meant it was not the whole of him. It was a layer, a chosen layer, maintained with the same quiet discipline he brought to the garden. She did not understand this yet. What she understood was that 11 days after Crestfield went silent, Danny Pewitt arrived on a resupply shuttle he was not scheduled to be on. She recognized him from photographs. Cole's oldest crew, gravel voice, bad knee from an incident Cole described only as asterisk, we were in a hurry. Asterisk, Danny was a big man, gone slightly soft at the edges in the way that big men sometimes go in the work that built them is behind them. He had the walk of someone who had once moved very fast through very tight spaces and had not entirely stopped expecting to. Need to. Cole met him at the docking bay. Vera was not there, she learned. About it later, the way she learned. About most things that happened outside. Her line of sight through residue. The way a room holds the shape of a conversation that just ended. They spoke. For 2 hours, private, Cole's log listed. It as a personal visit. When Cole came to bed that night, his skin was warm. Human bodies ran hot when the blood was moving towards something. She had learned this. It was different from the warmth of comfort, different from exertion. It was the heat of preparation, the body quietly arranging itself for a use it had not been put to in some time, pulling resources from the parts that could spare them. She redded off his skin in the dark and filed it. Without naming it, she woke at 302. Find his side of the bed empty. He was at the viewport, standing, not leaning. His hands were loose at his sides. He was looking at the stars the way she searched for the right frame. The way a man looks at a map when he has already decided the route and is just confirming the distance. She sat up. The station made its usual sounds around them, all the small mechanical breathing of a habitat keeping itself alive. She asked, Asterisk, is this about Crestfield? He turned. His face was his face. His eyes were his eyes, the same face she had pressed her forehead to 10,000 times, the same face that looked at her across the kitchen table every morning, the same face that had gone genuinely soft the first time she had called him. Asterisk, mine, asterisk, in her own language, a word that in Nari carried more weight than the human equivalent. And he had somehow understood that. Without being told, he said, asterisk, go back to sleep, love, do, asterisk. His voice was still soft. That was the worst part. She had expected, she did not know what she had expected, some crack in it, some edge, some sign that the warmth was under pressure. The softness did not break, it did not thin, it held completely the way it always held. It just went underneath, very far down. She lay back. She stared at the ceiling. She heard him return to the viewport and the small sound of him standing still. She opened her log. She made a new entry. She described his voice, his posture, the heat of his skin, the 2 hours with Danny Pewitt, the way he had looked at the stars. She chose each word carefully because she was a scientist and she believed in accurate records. At the bottom of the entry in the field she used for preliminary conclusions, she wrote one word, asterisk, anomaly, dot, asterisk. She saved it. She closed her eyes. She lay very still in the dark, while Cole stood at the viewport and looked at the distance between here and wherever he was already planning to go. The garden would get watered in the morning. She knew this the way she knew most things about him, completely, without question, without understanding. Yet that certainty about one thing can be a door that stays closed to everything behind it. Thinking, she finally asked Danny what Cole had been before the piece, but that came later. First came the session room and the Vorith ambassador and the word that landed in the middle of the table like something dropped from a height. Asterisk, children, dot, asterisk. In the Nari diplomatic language, it was a specific term, not an insult in the human sense, not crude or violent. It was more precise than that, and therefore worse. It meant, asterisk, you are here because we permit it. You are protected here, not powerful. You have not yet earned a seat at this table. You have been placed in a chair and told to sit quietly. The Vorith ambassador said it in reference to the human delegation, said it smoothly without raising his voice, while Lena Cho translated for the record, with an expression like someone swallowing glass and deciding not to show it. Consul Karen began to respond with careful language, the kind of language designed to acknowledge without conceding, to protest without escalating. He was very good at it. He had spent 40 years getting good at it. Vera was watching Cole. He was seated 2 places to the left of the human delegation. Lead observer status, no formal speaking role in the session. He sat the way he always sat, not slouched, not rigid, just present, the way a piece of furniture is present, but also the way person is present when they are choosing to make themselves look like furniture. He was smiling, small, private, the smile she knew from the kitchen when he was working out how to fix something. Not excited, not amused exactly, just engaged with a problem in the specific way of a person who has already found the beginning of the solution and is following the thread. She had never found that smile frightening before. It frightened her now, and she did not know why, because nothing else about him had changed. He was still cold, still quiet, still contained. He did not speak. He did not react when the word asterisk, children asterisk, dropped. His hands rested flat on the table, relaxed in. When the session ended, he held the door open for Lena Cho and asked her in a low voice if she needed anything. She looked at him for a moment too long. Asterisk. No, asterisk, she said. Asterisk, thank you, Cole. Asterisk. There was something in the way she said his name, not warmth exactly, something more like recognition, the way you say the name of something you have known about for a long time. Vera watched this exchange and filed it. She found Danny in the east corridor 20 minutes later. He was going nowhere in particular, with the deliberate pace of a man who has learned that if you move like you have a destination, people leave you alone. She fell into step beside him. She did not build up to it. She asked him flat way scientists ask things when they have decided they need the data more than they need to be polite. What did Cole do before the survey work? Danny walked 3 more steps before he answered. She counted them, 3. He did not answer the question she asked. He looked at her sideways with the expression of a man deciding how much of a thing to hand over, and then he answered the question underneath the question she had asked. You know how your people say humans are aggressive? Asterisk, asterisk, yes. They're not wrong, but they're reading the surface. He paused, not for effect. She could tell the difference. She had spent 6 years reading Cole's pauses, but because he was choosing the right words and he wanted them to be the right ones. Asterisk, Cole's not the aggressive kind. Asterisk, then what kind is he? Danny chewed his lip. He looked at the corridor wall like it had the answer written on it in small print. Asterisk. The patient kind. Asterisk, he said. He turned at the next junction and walked away and left her standing with those 3 words and no frame to put them in. She went back to her lab. She pulled up everything she had on Cole's service history before the survey work. Most of it was classified at levels she could not reach. What she could reach told her almost nothing. Dates, vessel designations, mission codes that resolved to nothing when she searched them. 11 years of work that the records described in the flattest possible language, the language of files that have been deliberately made boring so that people Stop reading, she stopped reading, she sat with the blankness of the records and thought about what it meant that 11 years of a person's life could be compressed to nothing. Then the feed came in, a civilian transport human. Registered the * Carlo *, running a standard route from the outer relay to the Accord's primary hub, 214. People aboard, 38 of them were children. The evacuated survivors from Crestfield Station, the ones who had gotten out before the silence fell. The Vorith intercepted at 6 hours out from the station. They called it a customs inspection. They held the * Carlo dark for 6 hours. No signal out, no signal in. 214 people sitting in the belly of a ship that had gone quiet, in the way that ships go quiet when the people in charge of them have been replaced by people with different intentions. Then 6 hours later they let it go. Everyone aboard was alive, accounted for, unharmed officially. The Vorith issued a formal non-apology, the diplomatic kind, the kind that uses the word * regrettable * while meaning * noted. The manifest came through on the station feed an hour later, all 214 names alphabetical, the children listed at the end because the entry system sorted by age group. Vera was in the common room when Cole read it. She was not watching him specifically, but her skin was always reading the room the way her people's skin always read rooms. Background automatic, the same way human ears register sound without actively listening, and Cole registered. He read every name. She watched him do it without seeming to watched his eyes move down the list slowly, steadily, the way a person reads something they intend to remember, not skimming, not scanning for a known name. Reading everyone the way you read something that you are taking responsibility for. The garden went unwatered the next morning for the first time. She noticed when she woke, and the sound was not there. The water, the low words, the particular silence of a contented person, the absence of it sat in the room like a shape. She found him at the common area table with the manifest pulled up, still the names. Still reading, she crushed to him. She put her hand on his arm. He led her. He did not pull away, did not stiffen, did not change. He let her hand rest there and continued reading under her hand. His arm was iron, not tension. She knew tension was a thing wound too tight, a thing that might snap. This was different. This was a wire pulled to exactly the right tornus. This was a calibrated thing, a thing set at a specific level and held there with complete control. She removed her hand. Her skin lit up a color that her people displayed when they encountered a creature they had badly misread. Not fear, not danger. The specific bioluminescence of a scientist discovering that her data was correct and her conclusion was wrong, and that the gap between those two things was enormous. She went back to the list she kept in her head, every soft thing about him, the garden, the braiding, the forehead press, the laugh. She kept the list. She did not remove anything from it. She just understood for the first time that it was incomplete. She had thought his fury would look like anger. It did not look like anger. The Vorith fleet came in at 600 station time. 7 ships, Admiral Drewey commanding, crossing the Accord border in a clean formation that said everything about how they expected this to go. They expected it to go simply. They expected it to go the way these things go when one side Has the ships and the other side has the words drew his opening communique. Arrived before any alarm did. It was elegant, she would give it that, elegant and contemptuous in the specific way of someone who has thought about the contempt for a long time and has dressed it in careful language. Humanity was to be reclassified, a protected species, under Vorith governance, for their own benefit. The communicate was careful to note the accord was dissolved by declaration. The Nari were offered tributary status, a generous arrangement. Druce called it that. Recognized their cooperation to date. It had the texture of something that had been decided before the fleet left port, before the Carlo was stopped, before Crestfield went silent. A thing that had been on a list somewhere for a long time, waiting for the right moment, and the right moment had been selected with the cold patience of people who believed they had already won before the first move. Consolve. Karen was broadcasting appeals on 4 channels. Lena Cho was translating. The station alarms were running. The evacuation corridors were lit in amber. Cole was not at his post. Vera found this out the way she found out most things she did not want to know, by going looking for something else and arriving somewhere she had not planned to be. She was moving toward the diplomatic wing when she passed the docking bay, and the door was not fully sealed, and the sounds coming through it were not the sounds of an evacuation. She pushed the door open. Cole was there, Danny was there, Pete Vasquez was there, 11 others from the station's human crew. She recognized faces, names, people she had eaten meals with, people Cole had introduced her to at crew gatherings with the easy warmth of a man who wanted the people he liked to know each other. They were quiet, organized, pulling equipment from cases that were logged in the station manifest as survey tools. The equipment did not look like survey tools. Lena Cho was standing at the far side of the bay with her arms crossed and her face arranged in the expression of a person who has been waiting for this specific moment for a very long time and has complicated feelings about it arriving. Vera looked at Cole. He looked back at her. His face was still his face. His eyes were still warm, the specific warmth she had read 10,000 times, and she read it now and found warmth still there, unchanged, and underneath it a depth she had no instrument for, something old and settled and fully awake. He crossed to her. He stopped close. Stay with Vith Urin. He said. Stay inside the station, shielding the inner ring, not the outer. You understand? Cole. Whatever you see from the viewport. He paused. It's going to be okay. She looked at the cases, at Danny, who was not looking at her, at Pete, who was with an expression she could not read, because it was not quite anything she had a word for, not guilt, not apology. Something more like the face a person makes when they are about to do something they have been ready to do for a long time. What is happening? She asked. Cole pressed his forehead to hers, long, deliberate, both hands light on her shoulders, thumbs at the base of her neck, the way he always placed them, the way that had become the physical location of the word safe. In her body, he said. I have been very patient. He stepped back. He returned to the cases. She stood in the doorway and could not make her feet move in any direction. Lena Cho appeared at her Elbow, asterisk in a ring, asterisk Lena. Said quietly, asterisk he means it. Asterisk asterisk what is he asterisk? Asterisk in a ring Vera asterisk she. When she was in the observation bay of the inner ring her back to the wall. Console veteran 3FT to her left still. Transmitting diplomatic appeals into a channel that was no longer being monitored when 3 ships dropped out of fold space inside Vorith formation. Range she knew the vessel class survey. Ships the long-range kind the kind had piloted for 11 as she had seen. Photographs, she recognized the whole design the way you recognize the handwriting of someone you know well. They had been modified. She could see it. Even at this distance, even through the viewport's resolution limit, the modifications were not small. The open channel crackled, Cole's voice came through and it was quiet and it was level and it was the voice he used when he explained something to her in the dark after the lights were out and they were close and the station was sleeping. He gave Drew and say 1 transmission. Asterisk, you stopped a ship with 214 people on it, 38 of them were children. From Crestfield, you have had 11 months to understand what that means to us. I'm sorry you spent them wrong, asterisk. Knows no a statement of fact delivered the way a geologist states the age of a stone because the stone does not need to argue for its age. The age is simply true. 19 minutes. She watched it happen and could not look away and could not fully understand what she was seeing. Because nothing in her training, nothing in her research, nothing in 6 years of close observation had given her a frame. For it, the 3 ships moved through the Vorith formation the way the deep current fish of her home ocean moved through kelp, not fast, not desperate, not aggressive in any way she recognized as aggression, with total certainty, the certainty of something that belongs exactly where it is, doing exactly what it came to do, with no part of its attention spent on doubt. Each Vorith vessel was disabled in sequence, not destroyed. Disabled chord, she could only think of it that way, the specific verb arriving because it was accurate. Chord like fruit. The critical systems excised with a precision that spoke of plans made over months, plans that knew where every system on every Vorith vessel sat and what to remove to leave the ship alive but unable. 7 ships disabled, alive, spinning in formation. Like 7 reminders, Drew's flagship was last. Cole pulled alongside it and cut its engines with a single action that she later spent 4 hours calculating, because the precision required to do what he did without rupturing the flagship's hull, without killing the 600 people aboard, was the kind of precision that does not come from instinct. It comes from a very long time of knowing exactly what you're capable of. 19 minutes. The Vorith formation was silent. The Accord channel was silent. The station was silent. Every person in the inner ring standing at the viewports or hunched over screens, and no one speaking because there was nothing to say that the 19 minutes had not already said. Konsolv Kurin stood very still beside her. His skin was the color of old stone. He said barely above a breath, "Isk, we have been misreading them." Vera said nothing. She was luminescent. Her skin had lit up the way it only ever lit up in extreme conditions, not the restrained social bioluminescence of day-to-day life, but the full, involuntary kind, the kind that happens when the body processes something the mind has not caught up to yet. She did not know what color she was showing. She Could not see herself, she only knew that she was showing something she had no name for in a color she had never needed before. She pressed her hand flat against the viewport glass, cold. The glass was always cold, beyond it coals. Ship was docking, Di came home smelling like burnt circuitry and made her tea. That was the first thing, not a long conversation, not a full accounting, not the kind of scene she had rehearsed in her head during the 3 hours between the viewport and the docking bay door. He came through the habitat entrance, set something down, went to the kitchen and put the water on. He moved through the small space the way he always moved through it, careful of her things which were taller than his things, which took up different kinds of room. He handed her the cup. He sat across the table. He said, "How are you?" And she had laughed. She had not expected to laugh, but it came out of her the way a thing comes out when the alternative is something larger and harder to hold, and he watched her laugh with the patient expression of a man who understood why and was willing to wait for it to finish. They sat together for a long time that night without talking much. The station was loud in its corridors. She could hear it, the specific sound of a place processing something enormous, voices and doors, and the particular hum of communication systems running at full capacity. Accord diplomatic channels had been open and active since the 19 minutes ended. Lena Cho was presumably still awake, still translating, still pressing her mouth into that flat line. The habitat was quiet. Cole's coffee sat cold at his elbow because he had forgotten it, which was a thing he did when he was inside his own head. She watched him do it the way she had watched him do it 100 times and felt something complicated move through her, a feeling that did not have a clean name in either of their languages. The weeks that came after were loud in the ways that weeks after enormous things are always loud. Admiral Drewey and his command staff were reminded to accord custody. The Vorith sent 3 separate diplomatic delegations in 15 days, each one using a slightly different tone, each one searching for the frame that would allow them to call what happened something other than what it was. The Accords legal bodies were in continuous session. New documents were drafted. Old frameworks were dismantled and reconstructed with different load-bearing walls. Humanity's classification in the Accord was formally put up for revision. There was significant debate about which existing tier they belonged to. The debate lasted 4 days before Lena Cho submitted a brief 12-page document to the classification committee that apparently ended the debate completely. Vera read it. The central argument was that humanity did not fit any existing tier because the existing tiers had been built around a framework that separated capacity for violence from capacity for restraint, as if they were opposite ends of a scale, and that this framework was, in light of recent events, demonstrably wrong. The committee created a new category. Vera read the formal description of it 3 times. She thought it was the most careful piece of language she had encountered in a decade of reading careful language. Cole read it once, said *car* in. Went back to checking the garden. 3 plants had not survived. He removed them without ceremony and set the soil aside for reuse, which was a practical thing to do, and also, she understood now, a very cold thing to do. Grieve and compost in the same motion. Use the loss for the next thing that grows. Most of the plants it held, May in the corner had not only held but put out 2 new branches during the chaos, which Cole noted with the private satisfaction of someone who expected exactly this from their grandmother. She watched him work. The early morning light, the station's approximation of it, warm spectrum time, to a version of the human circadian rhythm they had negotiated when they moved in together, fell across his back, and his hands, the scar on his collarbone was hidden by his collar. His hair was doing its usual 3 things. The inventory was still in her head. Every soft thing about him she had spent the past 3 weeks revising, not the list but her understanding of it. The entries were all still accurate. The garden, the braiding, the forehead press, the laugh, the careful hands, the 17 words of Nari spoken only at the right moments, all still true. She had not been wrong about any of them. She had been wrong about what they meant. She had read them as evidence of his nature, as proof that the gentleness was the whole of him, that it went all the way down, that the violent reputation of his species was a history that had not made it forward into Kalhar Grove. What she understood now was that the gentleness was a choice made every day, deliberate against the grain of something much older that did not go away and was not in conflict with it. Both things living in the same person, the softness and the depth beneath it. And the softness was not a covering for the depth. It was the thing he chose to lead with, the thing he tended with the same daily care he gave the garden, the thing he had chosen again and again for every one of the 10,000 mornings she had been there to watch him choose it. She asked him the question at breakfast. She had been holding it for 3 weeks and had decided she would rather have the answer than carry the holding any longer. Asterisk, were you afraid? Asterisk. She said, asterisk, during the 19 minutes. He looked up from his plate. He thought about it genuinely, visibly in the way that she had always loved about him. Way he checked himself before he answered, instead of reaching for the easy thing. Asterisk, no, asterisk, he said, asterisk. Not during asterisk, asterisk, before. He turned his coffee cup in his hands. The chipped one, the one with the character asterisk, every day for 11 month, asterisk, he said, asterisk. Every day. I thought maybe it doesn't come to this. Maybe they read the situation and they stop. Asterisk, pause. Asterisk, I was afraid of what I would have to be, not afraid of them. She looked at him across the table, across the cups and the plates and the small ordinary distance of a shared breakfast in a small ordinary kitchen in a habitat module 600 light years from the graves of everyone they had ever lost. She reached across the table. He took her hand without looking at it. The way people take the hands of people they have been taking the hands of for a long time. Her skin lit up. Asterisk, Verthal. Involuntary, the bioluminescence of a thing that is beautiful precisely because it could also be a wound. The color she had never shown him, the word she had never told him. He looked at her hand, at the light coming from her skin. Warm, deep, a color she had no human translation for. He did not know what it meant. He had 17 words of her language, and this was not one of them. He held her hand. That was enough. That was, she thought, the most human thing she had ever seen him do, to hold a thing whose full meaning he could not read because the holding itself was the answer. She went back to her log that evening, the entry she had written 6 years ago. Asterisk, Harrove is proof that Humanity's reputation for violence is. Selective reading, asterisk was still. There, she had not deleted it during the weeks of revising. She had been deciding what to do with it. She left it in place. She added one line beneath it. Asterisk, the most significant finding in 6 years of close observation is that Colhar Grove's gentleness is not a surface behavior but a structural one, and that I was wrong about what structure means. A river is not gentle because it lacks force. It is gentle because it chooses for now to run smooth. The riverbed is still stone. I had catalogued the water. I had not understood the stone. Both are they river, both are him. Asterisk, she saved it. She closed her log. From the other room she could hear Cole talking to May, low voice, a few words, the sound of water, the garden getting tendered. She sat at her desk in the warm light and listened, and for the first time since the 19 minutes she felt the specific peace of a person who is finally finished understanding something. Not that it makes sense, not that it is simple, but that it is whole, that it belongs together, that the soft thing and the deep thing are not in conflict, that she had married both of them all along, and that the soft one took the harder back.